Continuing from the last video, like other tractates in Sefer Kedoshim, especially the smaller ones, Tractate Teruma is full of alternative versions of discussions and textual variants. More frequently than other tractates, the Gemara includes different versions of statements and answers, including introduced with the term another version. No less important are the numerous variations of the tractate's text found in the early commentaries, and also unique expressions in this tractate not found elsewhere in the Babylonian Talmud, e.g. the term tibaye, meaning that the dilemma remains unresolved, instead of the more common tiku, meaning the dilemma shall stand. The tractate is devoted almost entirely to halacha. The little Agadic material that is presented is unrelated to the main issues and cited tangentially to the discussion. Tractate Teruma comprises 7 chapters, each of which has one or more defined topics. Although as is typical, the Gemara will occasionally analyze an unrelated matter. Likewise, certain cases are mentioned in the tractate due to the halachic or linguistic similarity to substitution. The subjects of the chapters are as follows. Chapter 1 deal with most of the central halakha of substitution. Who can perform substitution? For what can one substitute? And what can be substituted? It also includes a lengthy discussion of the halakha efficiency of prohibited actions. Chapter 2 discusses 2 main topics: the difference between an individual offering and a communal offering, the difference between substitution and other halakha concerning offerings. Chapter 3 focuses on the offspring of sacrificial animals. Which of them are consecrated and how do sanctities take effect with regard to various types of offerings. Chapter 4 examines different types of sin offerings that are unfit for sacrifice, each sin offering that is qualified and condemned to die. Chapter 5 addresses 2 subjects. First, the ways of consecrating an animal fetus, and second, the proper wording used in substitution and consecration. Chapter 6 deals mainly with those offerings that are prohibited for sacrifice due to transgressions performed with them, especially prohibition against sacrificing animals given as payment to a prostitute or as a price of a dog, as well as the halacha concerning the offspring of these forbidden animals. Finally, chapter 7 analyzes the differences between animals consecrated for sacrifice and items consecrated to temple maintenance, and the appropriate manner by which to dispose of various prohibited objects. So now on to the introduction of the first parak. Leviticus 27:30, he shall not inquire whether it is bad or good or bad, neither shall he substitute for it. If he substitutes it, then both it and that for which it is substituted shall be sacred. It shall not be redeemed. This verse is summarized halacha of substitution leaves many practical questions unanswered with regard to the nature of the act. One line of inquiry involves the individual performing the substitution. It's clear that no one is permitted to perform a substitution, but it must be established who has the ability to effect substitution, i.e., whose statement of substitution causes a non-sacred animal to be imbued with sanctity. The verses indicate that the owner has the power to perform substitution, but what if the offering has left his jurisdiction and is now in the possession of the priest? Similarly, what is the halacha if the offering belongs to the priest from the start of his consecration, e.g. in the case of a firstborn animal? Can the priest effect substitution? Furthermore, the offering was given to another person to return thereby. Can the owner still perform a substitution, or is the capacity to effect substitution reserved for the one achieving atonement? Likewise, can partners or collective perform substitution? Many questions also arise with regard to the animals involved in substitution. Anyone substitute for any animal that was consecrated, even if the consecrated animal is unfit for sacrifice? Similarly, does the halacha of substitution apply to all sacrificial animals, only to certain types of offerings? Can substitution be effected only with another animal of the same kind, and can be effected with all types of animals? Another issue is whether a person can substitute one animal for several others, or many animals for one. And is it possible to substitute part of an animal or fetus inside it? Finally, it must be determined whether an animal that was consecrated by substitution is sanctified to the extent that another animal can in turn be substituted for it. The clarification of these basic questions provides the overall framework for the halacha of substitution, although many ancillary matters are analyzed later in the tractate. Although substitution is a prohibited act, it is nevertheless halachically effective, as the substitute animal is thereby consecrated. This fact raises another central question in the chapter: is this halacha an exception, or does it reflect the principle throughout halacha that violations of prohibitions are effective. These questions and a few other issues are discussed incidentally are topics of this chapter. So let's dive straight in. Okay. Daf 2 Omid A. The Mishnah. Hakol memirin echad anoshim ve'echad noshim lo she'adam rashe lahamir ela she'im heimer muma v'sov feig es ha'arbaim. Everyone substitutes a non-sacred animal for a consecrated animal, both men and women. That is not to say that it is permitted for a person to effect substitution. So what's the footnote there? No shadam rashe lahamir. Not to say that it is permitted for a person to effect substitution. The Hedgehog Shlomo asks, why is it necessary for the Mishnah to state that it is not prohibited for one to effect substitution? The verse explicitly prohibits doing so, as it states, he shall not exchange it, nor substitute it, a good for bad, or bad for good. Verse 27:10, it is explained there that one might have thought that the prohibition applies only to the one who intends to transfer the sanctity from the sacrificial animal to the non-sacred one, thereby rendering the heretofore sacrificial animal non-sacred. The Mishnah teaches that even if one's intention is to extend the sanctity to a non-sacred animal, leaving the sacrificial animal as is, it is nevertheless prohibited. Rather, it means that if one substitutes a non-sacred animal for a consecrated animal, if the substitution takes effect and the non-sacred animal becomes consecrated, the consecrated animal will remain sacred. And the one who substitutes a non-sacred animal incurs 40 sofag et ha'arbam lashes. Incurs 40 sofag et ha'arbam. This phrase is used to describe a fixed number of lashes, which in effect is 39. This is the punishment for the violation of a prohibition. The lashes given for the violation of a rabbinic law, lashes of rebelliousness, do not have a fixed number. Some say that the word sofag is from the Greek spongios, meaning sponge. The term sephog from the root shin pei gimel initially meant that an item that absorbs liquids, and was later extended to refer to anything that can absorb something, e.g. to absorb financial costs, or in this case to absorb the impact of the flogging. Others suggest a connection to the word sofek, meaning to strike. The Gemara knows an apparent contradiction in the Mishnah. This Mishnah itself is difficult. You can say that everyone substitutes. There was another footnote on the 40 lashes. There was a dispute among the early commentaries as to the extent of the liability of the one who effects substitution. Some hold that the Mishnah intentionally states that he incurs 40 lashes just to emphasize he is liable to receive only one set of lashes, e.g. 40 less 1. The novelty of this ruling is that although the verse states two prohibitions, he shall not exchange it nor substitute in Leviticus 27:10, he does incur two sets of lashes. This is because each prohibition relates to a specific manner of effecting substitution, C9b, so that one does not violate both prohibitions concurrently. So there was here on Chullin 2a. Others explain that he incurs only one set of lashes based on the opinion of the Rambam, that the repetition of the same prohibition does not affect one's liability with regard to lashes, and that's for the Yosef Da'at. Totfot, in their first answer, hold that one who violates the prohibition does in fact incur two sets of lashes, and that the usage of the phrase incurs 40 lashes is imprecise. This would accord with the opinion of the Ramban that the repetition of the same prohibition does affect one's liability with regard to lashes. And then we'll go back to the footnote here. Everyone substitutes hakol memirin. There is a principle with regard to the terminology used in the Mishnah that any halacha stated in present tense indicates that it is performed ab initio, while halacha stated in past tense refers to the ruling after the fact. A non-sacred animal for consecrated one, which indicates that substitution may be performed ab initio. And then you teach that is not to say that it is permitted for a person to effect substitution. Rather, it means that if one unlawfully substitutes a non-sacred animal for a consecrated animal, the substitution takes effect, indicate that it is effective only after the fact. The Gemara responds, and how can you understand the phrase everyone substitutes as indicating that substitution may be performed ab initio? If so, before the Mishnah poses a difficulty for you. The verse should pose a difficulty for you as it is written, he shall not alter it nor substitute in Leviticus 27:10. The verse clearly states that is prohibited to perform substitution. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda says, this is what the Mishnah is teaching. Everyone can apply the state of a consecrated animal to a non-sacred animal by the act of substitution, both men and women. If either man or woman substitutes a non-sacred animal for a consecrated one, the substitution takes effect in Rambam Sefer Kabbalah Hilchot Temura 1:7. But that is not to say that it is permitted for a person to effect substitution, as if one did effect substitution, the substitution takes effect only after the fact and he incurs 40 lashes. One is flogged for each and every animal that he substitutes, despite the fact that this is a prohibition that does not involve an action. Rambam Sefer Kabbalah Hilchot Temura 1:1. The Mishnah teaches that everyone substitutes a non-sacred animal for a consecrated animal. The Gemara asks, what does the comprehensive term everyone serve to include? The Gemara answers, it serves to include the inheritor, and accordingly this Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. As we learned in a Braita, an inheritor who inherited a consecrated animal places his hands. There was a footnote here. Yoresh Somech, an inheritor places his hands. The latter commentaries discuss whether the halacha that an inheritor places his hands on the offering applies only in a case where the previous owner would have placed his hands, e.g. he inherited the offering from a Jewish male, or even in a case where the previous owner would not have placed hands on the offering, e.g. he inherited it from a woman. Some attempt to compare halacha to the case of a Gentile who consecrates an animal as an offering and then converts it before sacrificing it. It's a fact. Emes Yosef Dad. If a person who died had bequeathed a burnt offering or peace offering to another, and the inheritor brings the offering, places his hands upon it, and brings its libations in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rambam Sefer Hilchot Kabbalah 3:9. On the head of the offering when he sacrifices, as it would the original owner, and likewise an inheritor is able to substitute. If one inherits an offering and substitutes another animal for it, his substitution takes effect according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rambam Sefer Kabbalah Hilchot Temura 1:5. A non-sacred animal for the sake of the one that he inherited. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, an inheritor does not place his hands on the head of the offering when he sacrifices it, and an inheritor does not substitute a non-sacred animal for a consecrated one that he inherited. These acts may be performed only by one who initially consecrated the animal. The Mishnah indicates that the inheritor is able to effect substitution contrary to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara asks, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? The Gemara explains, he derives the halacha of the animal's initial consecration after the end of the consecration, i.e., the sacrifice of a consecrated animal is followed. Just as with regard to the end of a consecrated animal, he does not place his hands on the head of the offering, which was also said to with regard to the initial consecration, the head does not affect the substitution to consecrate the animal. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive the halacha of placing hands itself? Semicha, placing a hand on an offering is an element of the atonement process of the one bringing the offering as his data, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make an atonement for him. Leviticus 1:4. This is how the placing of the hands is performed. The animal sacrifice will be placed to the north of the altar, with the head facing west. And the individual bringing the offering would stand to the left side of the animal, also facing west. He would place his two hands on the head of the animal between its horns and without any imposition. And where appropriate in the cases of a sin offering, a guilt offering, a burnt offering, confess the sin that rendered him liable to bring that offering. The Gemara answers, the term his offerings is written there 3 times in the passage discussing a peace offering in connection with the placing of the hand of it at 3:2, 8 and 12. One instance teaches that the requirement of placing hands applies to its offering, but not the offering of a Gentile. A Gentile does not place his hands upon the offering. That's in the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Kabbalah 3:8. And one instance teaches that it applies to its offering, but not to the offering of another. An agent does not place his hands upon an offering he is bringing, as placing hands is performed by the owner. Rambam Sefer Hilchot Kabbalah 3:8. As the owner places his hands on the offering. As only the owner places his hand on the offering, and one instance teaches that it applies to his offering but not to the offering of his father, as an inheritor does not place his hands on the offering that he inherited. The Gemara asks, but according to Rabbi Meir, who said that an inheritor places his hands on the head of an offering when he sacrifices, isn't the term his offering written in the verse? How does he interpret the third instance of that term? The Gemara explains, he requires that term to include all joint owners, Balei Chaverim or Balei Chaverin, sorry. This means that there are several people who together offer an offering. Perhaps a Balei was added instead of merely Chaverin, which could denote partners, in order to avoid the similarity to the term Chover, which in the Torah is a form of necromancy. See Deuteronomy 18:11 is the halacha of placing hands. If 5 people bring an offering together, they all place their hands upon it. They should place their hands one after another, not simultaneously, in according to the Mishnah to Septa Menachat. That's the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Matzah Kabbalah 3:9 and C 9:15. The T said all must place their hands on the offering's head. The Gemara knows, and as for Rabbi Yehuda, he does not accept that owners are included in the requirement of placing hands. Sometimes Rabbi Yehuda holds that placing hands is not performed with an offering belonging to partners. Rashi. By contrast, in parallel discussions elsewhere in the Talmud, Rashi explained that Rabbi Yehuda holds that there is no need for all of them to place their hands on the offering, and it is sufficient that one of them do so. Some commentators explain this contradiction based on the nuances of the Talmudic text, and it is specifically in the discussion here that the Gemara cites the reasons of Rabbi Yehuda as their offering is not specific to one person, according to which it is not the type of offering that requires the placing of hands. In the parallel discussions, no reason is given, and therefore it is possible there to explain Rabbi Yehuda's opinion elsewhere. Otherwise, what is the reason for this? The reason is that the offering is not specific to one person, and therefore not included in the term his offering. And if you wish, they instead that actually accept that one instance of his offering serves to include joint owners, and he divides both halacha of the offering of a Gentile and that of an offering of another from one verse, so that one instance of his offering remains for him to include joint owners in the requirement of placing hands on the head of an offering. And the third instance serves to teach that an inheritor does not place hands on the offering of his father. The Gemara asks, and what is the reason Rabbi Meir, who said that an inheritor can affect substitution? The Gemara answers, Rabbi Meir could say to you, at the repetition of the verb in the verse, and if he shall substitute, and if he shall and all substitute Chami Yamur, animal for animal, in Leviticus 27:10, shows to include the inheritor. That's the end of the first Amud. I wish you a very good day, wish you peace in Israel, and may you be blessed. Okay, bye.